When we organize, we win. 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 What's the solution? Our revolution. What's the solution? Our revolution. What's the solution? Our revolution.
Greetings, America. Hi, my name is Mike, downtown Denver, Colorado. The Our Revolution Organized to Win Tour is here with multiple groups from Colorado, from across the state, and then at 6 o'clock tonight, Mountain Time, Bernie Sanders is down the street. 15,000 people should be showing up for the convention, and here we have a full room today at the Mercury Cafe in downtown Denver. First, I want to introduce John Foley. Hey, John. John, you are from Colorado Springs, 27 years in the U.S. military. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're here today.
Well, I'm here today because I'm a retired Army officer, Lieutenant Colonel, spent a career in the military, also a member of the intelligence community. And when we talk about the endless wars, what we have to really focus on is how much the intel community has led our nation and our population down this horrible route.
And here in Colorado, this is a state where there's a heavy military presence. Colorado Springs is a place where the evangelical Christian right has organized pretty hard. The progressive movement is organizing now hard in Colorado Springs. President Trump is going to be in Colorado Springs on Thursday, and you're organizing a group of people, a group of veterans to speak out about Trump to come back.
I will be there with not only some of the veterans from the progressive veteran movement, but there's multiple other folks in the community who will be out there to say our opinion and what we think about
And what's your message from the revolution to President Trump and his supporters?
Our message is that we're coming. And
That's right. So Colorado Springs doesn't want Trump there. The revolution, Bernie Sanders is organizing really strong across the state, especially with the veterans community. Why do you support Sanders? Why do you support this movement in endless wars?
The endless wars have basically bankrupted our nation. It's going to make it difficult for any sort of positive, progressive change to occur with the continuation of these endless wars. And we also have to focus on preventing Trump from trying to get us into another endless war with Iran.
That's right.
So that's critical at this juncture.
Joseph has been a grassroots organizer for 20 years. In 2012, he founded Good Jobs Nation and led the national fight for 15 alongside Bernie Sanders. When Senator Nina Turner moved over to the co-chair of Bernie's campaign, Joseph was asked to take over Our Revolution and take our organizing to the next game. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Joseph.
When we organize, we win. When we organize, we win. When we organize, we win. Woo! So, brothers and sisters, my name is Joseph Givargis. I'm the National Executive Director of Our Revolution. Woo! And when I say when we organize, we win, it's not just a rallying cry. It is reality. It is the only way that social change has ever happened in the United States of America. Back in 2013, I led a group of low-wage workers on strike outside the White House. Even though these workers work full-time, they had to use food stamps and Section 8 because they simply could not survive on $7.25. These workers took to the streets because the political establishment in Washington and in their own communities had ignored their pain and their suffering. In fact, before the strike movement started, I had the opportunity to meet with the Vice President Biden, in the White House with other worker union leaders. We asked the Vice President, these are the folks who elected you. They're relying on you to defend their interests. We're calling on you to use the power of the federal government to raise the minimum wage and to defend and protect the right, the fundamental right of workers to organize. The Vice President listened. He was very gracious. And he said, I'll get back to you. He never did. And that is why workers took to the streets. Tens of thousands of fast food workers, McDonald's workers, Walmart workers, port truck drivers, workers all around the United States hit the streets to demand living wages and union rights. And when we first struck the White House in 2013, when workers said enough is enough, Bernie Sanders had our back. This is in 2013. Bernie was with us on the picket line every single time. Give it up for Senator Sanders. And brothers and sisters, because we built a grassroots movement of ordinary people to stand up, because we had political champions like Senator Sanders and Representative Keith Ellison, we got the Obama-Biden administration to issue 3 executive orders to raise the minimum wage, to crack down on wage theft, and extend paid leave for over 20 million workers in the United States of America. When we organize, not only that, we got mayors and governors and state legislatures to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. When we organize, brothers and sisters, it is not just a rallying cry, it is what we are called to do in this moment. Martin Luther King said that our supreme task, our highest personal calling, is to organize and to unite people so that their anger and their pain becomes a transformative force in society. Bernie Sanders started our revolution to be a transformative force in American political life. Bernie is calling us to organize a powerful grassroots movement that's people-powered. A grassroots movement that will win not just the White House, but also win the State House and the courthouse. Are you with me, brothers and sisters? That is the true political revolution, and now is our time. 2020 is a must-win moment for our movement. It's the best shot we got to transform our rigged political economy and take power back from the corporate elites who are destroying our country and our climate. We know that there's more of us than there are of them. And if we come together and organize, that's right, brothers and sisters, if we organize locally, we can win nationally. And at our revolution, our Organize to Win 2020 campaign is very simple. We are mobilizing over 1 million Our Revolution supporters around the United States to build powerful local groups, to elect progressive candidates up and down the ballot, and to fight locally for progressive policy priorities. That is the movement that Bernie is calling us to build. Brothers and sisters, I want to tell you about a couple of the summits we just had. In Houston, I had the opportunity to be with our leader, Jim Hightower. At the kickoff there, Alice Torres, a member of Our Revolution, she talked about the horror of Hurricane Harvey, the flood waters raging her home as a result of the toxic conditions created by black mold. She had chronic respiratory illness. In Houston and in Texas, Our Revolution is fighting for a Texas Green New Deal. That's remarkable. In addition to fighting for local change, we're also electing local candidates who will help move the Green New Deal. In fact, we just endorsed a candidate for Drainage Commissioner. You may laugh, but it is a critical position when you are facing an existential climate threat in the state of Texas. That's what we're doing, brothers and sisters. We are electing progressives and we're fighting on issues. Another example, when we were in Washington State, Alan Richrod talked about going to the emergency room and then getting handed an $87,000 medical bill. Our organization in Washington State is organizing to pass the whole Washington Health Trust. It would create a single payer system, a Medicare for all system in the state of Washington. And not only is our group advancing that legislation, they have endorsed a slate of progressive candidates like Mariana Everson to run for state representative so that we can flip the House and make it even more progressive in Washington State. Brothers and sisters, when we organize, we have a better feel for the movement that Bernie is calling us to create. Brothers and sisters, it is bigger than just winning the White House. We need Bernie Sanders in the White House. We need a strong leader who will challenge the rich and powerful. But we need each of you, right, to organize right here in Colorado and create a political powerhouse that will elect progressive champions who will transform that which is broken right here in your neighborhoods and your communities. That is the true revolution. It is not happening in Washington. It will happen here. That's right. We need to take to the streets and we need to be smart. And so what I'm going to ask you to do right now is very simple. It's our Organize to Win 2020 plan for Colorado. And the plan is this. We have 20,000 active Our Revolution supporters in the state of Colorado. These are people who open our emails. These are people who sign our issue petitions. These are people who donate to Our Revolution and donate to Senator Sanders' presidential campaign. What we must do in this moment is take them from being online clicktivists to being on this ground activists. Are you with me, brothers and sisters? Going into Super Tuesday, if we move those people, and these are our people, if we move them, we will sweep the election for Bernie Sanders. Are you with me, brothers and sisters? And so I had the opportunity to speak with some of the leaders of the groups here, the Our Revolution groups here in Colorado. They're going to be organizing phone banks to reach our base and to make sure they and their friends get to the polls, but not just get to the polls, get plugged into local Our Revolution chapters so that we can build a permanent political powerhouse. Brothers and sisters, I want to ask you this. The leaders of our groups can't do it alone. Will you help them and help reach out to the 20,000 Our Revolution supporters here in your community? So, the card that is on your seat is a commitment card. It's a commitment that you will give your time, right, to make those phone calls, to knock on doors. That's what it's going to take in this moment. So please fill out a card and make that personal commitment to the movement. That is what it's going to take in this moment if we're going to truly transform our country and create the world that we want to live in, create the world in which every human being has the opportunity to live the life they're going to lead. I want to close with one of my favorite quotes, which is from Margaret Mead. And it's this: never doubt that a small band of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. It is the only thing that ever has. From the civil rights movement, to the Fight for 15 movement, to the political revolution that we are leading right now, it is up to us. When we organize, we win! When we organize, we win! When we organize, we win! Thank you, brothers and sisters.
Hi, I'm Grace Thomas. I'm your MC for the night. I used to write for Clickhole. I contribute to The Onion, and I am just a comedian. But folks, our first speaker is an incredible activist from Nebraska, but we will not hold that against her. I don't know who wrote this script, but kind of rude. Jane Cleave does a lot of stuff. She serves on the national board of Our Revolution. She's the founder and president of Bold Alliance, a group of rural states working to protect our land and water. And as chair of the Nebraska Democratic Party, she's just written a new book called Harvest the Vote. That's a snappy title. Give it up for Harvest the Vote again, everybody. Okay, she's here to tell us about that and much more. Give it up for Jane Cleave.
One thing, because I have my family in the audience, if I didn't correct the pronunciation of our last name, they would literally me. So it's Cleb, just so everybody out there in the universe knows. I'm happy to be here with you. I am the chair of the Nebraska Democratic Party, and I'm a proud founding board member along with Jim Hightower, wherever he just went. And we decided to create our revolution not because of one person, but because of all of us. And I think it's critical for us to remember that we decided that it was not only important to work on all the issues that we deeply care about. For me in particular, I really want action on climate change. Quite frankly, I'm tired. I'm tired of even individuals in our own party pretending that we can somehow create climate action but still build out new fossil fuel projects. And I'm here to say that that's impossible. If we're going to take action on climate change, that means ending fossil fuel pipelines. That means ending fracking, that means the development of coal, right? You can't say you're going to solve climate change and then on the other hand continue to give big handouts to big oil. So that's one of the reasons why I joined Our Revolution. The other reason I joined the Our Revolution board was because we can't only have one foot in the streets, and in my case in Nebraska, in the fields. We also have to have one foot in the party. We have got to transform the Democratic Party. There has to be more people like us in those rooms when we're making decisions about which candidates we're going to support. How are we going to do grassroots organizing? What states are we going to invest in? For too long, our party, which is what I talk about in my book, Harvest the Vote, we have adhered to this wiring of the electoral map that somehow the blue states and a few swing states sprinkled in are the only states that matter. Well, guess what? 50% of our population is going to start controlling 84 US senators because the vast majority of our populations are going to be concentrated in the coast and in states like Colorado. So if you want our Supreme Court to continue to look like it does, not representing America, if you want the US Senate to continue to look like it does, not representing America, if you want governors all across the United States to continue to looking like what they do, which looks like not America, then you have to organize in rural communities. And we used to win in our rural communities. The same values that we hold as the Democratic Party, which is that we believe that we all do better when we all do better, a saying that Senator Paul Wellstone carried on, but was actually created by Jim Hightower's father, a little trivia point for you. If we truly believe that, then we can't leave rural people behind. And that's what our party has done, that's what political movements have done, and that's what we in Nebraska showed how we can punch above our weight. We fought 10 years ago against the Keystone XL pipeline, and we're continuing to fight against the Keystone XL pipeline. And if the Democratic Party and if the environmental community decided when we first took that fight on, if they decided that they were going to fight that the same way they always have, which was to walk the halls of Congress, hold big steak dinners with members of Congress, getting them on their side, doing rallies in DC to convince President Obama to be on their side, we would have lost. The environmental community joined hands with rural farmers, with ranchers, and with tribal nations And we decided that we were going to do politics differently. We decided that we were going to take the fight not only to President Obama in Washington, D.C., but we were going to organize in farm country, in rural country, on the reservation, and we were going to organize the people who were directly impacted. The only way we win is if we start organizing the people who are hurting.
That's right.
And the only way we win is if we start showing up when they're hurting, and when we stand with them shoulder to shoulder to fight. So I wanted to read just from one section of my book, because it's the section where I talk about Senator Sanders, and I thought you guys would appreciate that. And I wanted, if you make a donation, $20 to Our Revolution today, you get one of my books, and I'll be happy to sign it afterwards. I'll be over there in the corner, as they say. I don't have my glasses, so oh Lord. All right. I'm not a policymaker, but I do have a unique perspective based on my involvement in the fight against the Keystone XL pipeline. My work as an organizer, and my personal life as a neighbor in rural America who listens to what folks are saying. Maybe it would be easier if we could just close a coal plant and build more wind and solar to power our communities, and that would be the end of the story. There are people and families and land involved, so it's not that easy. Our country has allowed big corporations to control the types of energy favored, when the energy is generated and who it's sold to. We've been told we don't get a say in the process. We've been told that because we flip a light switch and the power goes on to our homes, that energy's there and it's reliable, so we don't get a say. This system worked for us for decades, but now the entire equation has to be flipped, because we know the devastation of climate change brings to our communities with the continued fossil fuel development. In a 2016 exchange with coal workers, Senator Bernie Sanders nailed the response to climate change. He made it clear that he believed in climate change and acknowledged that jobs in the coal industry have been declining since the 70s. He then looked at a young coal miner and said, "I do not hold this gentleman and the coal workers responsible for climate change. In fact, I think these guys are heroes. I grew up in a rent-controlled apartment, and I will never forget the piles of coal that kept my house warm." Sanders then went on to say that our nation must make good on the pensions that the coal miners earned. He also stressed the need to invest money into communities devastated by climate change. We can acknowledge the hard work and not leave anyone behind, and make it clear that we stand where we stand on the changes that we must make now. Why this story is so important is because for too long as progressives, we have demonized those who work in the oil and coal industry. And they're hurting just as much as other families are as well. We don't decide that we're going to transform our energy system by building out more clean energy with wind and solar, and then decide that those families who work to keep our lights on for decades are going to be left behind. People in Our Revolution believe that we bring everybody up together, right? And that we build movements from the grassroots. And I'll just close with this very brief story. I was with a bunch of farmers. We're fighting a bunch of Costco chicken plants, right? Costco's come into states like Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas. They've decided that they can go into small communities because they don't hold a lot of power, or so they think. And they think your main streets are dying, so we'll come in and we'll provide a lot of jobs, we'll keep your schools open, etc. It's all, of course, a lie. Costco wants to come into a small town and process 2 million chickens a week. 2 million chickens a week. So those $5 rotisserie chickens that you're buying, please don't buy them. Buy from a local farmer. So a bunch of farmers decided they were going to fight back. These contracts that they put on our family farmers' shoulders are unfair. So we're organizing. I follow his pickup truck into town. He has 2 bumper stickers on his pickup truck. One is of the Tea Party, and there's one that has kind of a thing of a broken pencil that says, "If you think guns kill people, then you think pencils misspell words." Okay. So we were just talking about organizing, protecting property rights, water, all on the same page. I get out of my minivan, he gets out of his pickup truck, he comes over, and he says, "So, what do you think of my bumper stickers?" In that moment, as a progressive, I could have started yelling at him. I could have told him that I think his bumper sticker sucked, and that I thought that the Tea Party has ruined the Republican Party, and that the NRA is really just a big gun lobby. Instead, I put my arm around him, gave a chuckle, and said, "Look, we're probably not going to agree on gun reform tonight, but I'm here standing with you to protect your property rights and to protect our water, so let's start there." And that's what we do as progressives. We find common ground, we bring people along. The only way that we are gonna win elections and the only way that we're gonna get good people in office again is if we start to transform hearts and minds. And that means being on the streets and in the field and telling our stories and bringing people along with us. So thank you to our revolution. When we organize, we win. When we organize, we win. And we would have never won Keystone XL unless we organized at the grassroots level.
When we organize, we win. All right, give it up for Jane Kleb, everybody. I'm so sorry. All right, folks. Coming up next to the stage, we have a important speaker who is a former doctor. Who is going to speak to us about how healthcare is a human right. Everybody, please welcome Dr. Madeline Jacobs to the stage.
Hi, everybody. Can you all hear me? Yes. I'm Madeline Jacobs. I was a family physician in a rural practice in Fremont County here in Colorado for 28 years. And finally threw the towel in. Why? The system was not allowing me to provide even basic care for my patients. In the last year of my practice, 3 asthmatics ended up on ventilators because they could not afford their inhalers. 3 people younger than 65 died from colon cancer because they could not afford colonoscopy. And almost all of these people had insurance. We live in a country whose Declaration of Independence proclaims that we have the right for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Yet given that we live in bodies that will get sick, injured, and age, we cannot realize those rights if we cannot access health care. One would think that the purpose of a healthcare system would be to ensure that everyone is as healthy as possible so they can live full, productive lives. Yet the purpose of the American healthcare system is to maximize profit. And to do that, they deny healthcare. The insurance industry does this by collecting premiums and denying benefits. Big Pharma does this by manipulating lawmakers to allow monopolies, resulting in runaway prices. Hospital and practice corporations do this by maximizing the number of paying patients and making sure those with insurance are charged as much as possible for tests they may or may not need, while bleeding patients dry who do not have adequate coverage. The result is people dying from treatable disease or going bankrupt. The solution is not rocket science. In fact, over 70 countries around the world have made the moral decision to provide health care for all their people. The US is the only industrialized democracy that denies this to its people. It has been shown around the world that single payer provides the most affordable health care that results in health outcomes superior to the United States and covers everyone. Yet in America, our life expectancy is decreasing, despite that little bump, relative to these countries. And maternal and infant mortality are increasing. In America, 1 in 4 cancer patients need to decide whether to die or leave their families with crippling medical debt. And yet the answer is here. Improved Medicare for All would solve all these problems, and thanks to Bernie Sanders in the Senate and Pramila Jayapal in the House, the solutions are sitting there in Congress. Multiple states are working to provide universal health care if our federal politicians continue to fail to take action. In the meantime, we are in a health care crisis. People are needlessly suffering and dying due to greed. We, the people, need to pressure the politicians who care more where their campaign funds are coming from than the well-being of their constituents. We, the people, can right this wrong. Vote, caucus, let your representatives know that you support improved Medicare for all and will not vote for them if they don't. We can do this, we are doing this. And just an added footnote, we need someone in Denver to help us organize for this, for the Colorado Foundation and Universal Health Care. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Madeline, for sharing your story. Folks, coming up next is a tenant of Colorado's democratic community. He's been there for so many different causes, both that affect his own community and outside. He'll be speaking today about the Green New Deal and representing Colorado Rising. Everyone give it up for Joe Salazar.
What's up, my people? How's it going? It's a pleasure being here with you. So they asked me to come and speak about the Green New Deal, but really can't talk about it unless we bring it back home, right? Because, you know, I don't know if you know this, but since Polis has been governor, there have been 2,300 permits granted to the oil and gas industry. Over 2,100 in 2019 alone, and 179 just this past January. And this is a guy who ran on a platform of being an environmental warrior, of being a progressive. And we all knew that it was bullshit, right? Yes! We all knew that the moment that he got in, that he was going to compromise us, that he was going to compromise the state, he was going to compromise our environment, so that way the oil and gas industry could continue making a bunch of money. And how do I know this? Because as the executive director of Colorado Rising, as the chief litigator for Colorado Rising, and this is a shock to all the establishment, as the Democrat of the Year for the Colorado Democratic Party, I've been suing the hell out of the oil and gas industry and what they're doing to our communities. And just as the first speaker said, is that progressive, we don't leave anybody behind. I've been representing Republicans and unaffiliated voters and Democrats in a not so progressive bastion of Broomfield, Colorado, as well as in Commerce City, and fighting for people in Longmont, and now they are starting to encroach in my area in Thornton, Colorado. And we're fighting against them despite the fact that they're losing money hand over fist. Despite the fact that extraction oil and gas has gone from about $25 a share in November of 2018 to now trading at 95 cents a share as of Friday close. But yet there are still people out there who think that the incremental lifestyle is how we're supposed to do things. Do you know what an incrementalist is? It's just someone who kills you slower. That's what happens when we elect those types of people to office, is they're just looking to kill us slower because they don't want to get out of their own comfort zone. But not Bernie Sanders, huh? No! Not Bernie Sanders, huh? No! No! That's why this Green New Deal is super important to us. That way we can start transitioning over these oil and gas workers into other jobs. Jobs that actually benefit Mother Earth. Jobs that actually benefit our health, benefit our communities. That's what we're looking for in the Green New Deal. We're looking to make sure that these oil and gas companies and that these damn billionaires actually start paying their own taxes. And don't tell me that they don't pay their taxes. As we know from the Denver Post report that just recently we learned that the oil and gas industry here in the state of Colorado has failed to properly file, or has failed to file at all, over 51,000 severance tax reports. Over 51,000. Now, you know what? Maybe one time, okay, that's a one-off. Maybe two times, okay, well maybe you're making a mistake. 51,000 times? I think that's probably habitual. What do you think? So we don't know if they're actually paying the severance taxes here in the state of Colorado. We don't know what they're actually doing with our resources. We know that they're making money hand over fist, and they're taking it from us. And when we say leave it in the ground, they resist us. And when we have an agency like the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission that's supposed to hold their feet to the fire, they close their eyes. Of course they close their eyes. I just filed paperwork with them, filing a complaint against all those dirty bastards that didn't file those 51,000 complaints. And you know know what the COGCC came back and told me? I said, you have to go back to the first day that they didn't file the reports, because the statute tells you you have to go back to the first day. And they came back and said, oh, there's a 1-year statute of limitations. We can only go back 1 year. And I said, oh, snap, someone doesn't know how to read a statute. Because one part of the statute says there's a 1-year statute of limitations for certain things, and the other part of the statute says that you could go way back because it's a continuing violation. But imagine that the COGCC doesn't want to do that. Doesn't want to bring in those penalties that would help go into our general fund to help education, to help higher education, to help our marginalized communities, because they're afraid of hurting the oil and gas operators' feelings. We need something bold in this country. We need the Green New Deal. We need to evolve into our better selves. You have heard me say that time and time again, that the time is right now. It's not tomorrow. It's not another year from now. It's not 2 years from now. It's not 5. It is right now. And you were born for this moment, to rise up and to fight back, and to stand with Bernie Sanders, to stand for the Green New Deal, and to stand for each other. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And as I always say, I love you. Thank you.
We'll have a slate of incredible speakers. Folks, housing for all is one of the most vital issues of our time. We see it on our streets every day, and we see it reflected by our politicians who don't care at all about the homeless folks that are struggling every day throughout our city. Is that unacceptable? Yes! All right, folks, coming to talk about this issue, a homeless advocate in Boulder. Give it up for Darren O'Connor, everybody. Darren O'Connor.
Thank you all. I'm so grateful to be here. I am the co-regional vice president for the National Lawyers Guild in the Southwest region and the chair of the Criminal Justice Committee for the NAACP Boulder County branch. But I'm here on my own behalf to share on an issue of great concern to me. And the title I'm most proud of, most likely, is for the police in Boulder who do not obey the laws they're supposed to enforce. Pain in the ass. Before I talk about this, I want to point out Benjamin Dunning, who's sitting over here in the black cap. He is one of the people who helps run Denver Homeless Out Loud, which is 1 block away, and is fighting for our rights every day here in Denver. Thank you, Ben. So in the early 80s, President Reagan reduced federal spending on subsidized housing from approximately $85 billion in inflation-adjusted dollars by 80% to $15 billion. And we give nearly $80 billion in tax breaks on the mortgage interest deduction, with most of that going to the top 20% of income earners. And yet we fail to spend the kind of dollars needed to house our poor. Bernie Sanders, with our support, will end that. We lost roughly 500,000 units of public housing, and now the federal government counts approximately 500,000 homeless people. This nearly 1-to-1 ratio of lost housing units to the number of people experiencing homelessness is no coincidence. And a new report informs us just how much of an undercount this is, because a recent report showed that we have 1.5 million students in public schools that are experiencing homelessness. And that number is increasing rapidly, 15% in the last 3 years. The war on the poor has to stop. Our government created this crisis, and it exacerbates it with a federal minimum wage that hasn't increased since it was set at $7.25 an hour in 2009. Since 2009, rents here in Denver have gone up 50%. Just a few weeks ago, I was on the street right outside this building, videoing the police and contractors taking people's tents and belongings who weren't there to pack it up themselves. Just shortly after that, 2 men died of exposure in Denver.
I might want to note that there's rocks where those people used to be
Right.
standing. You can walk right across.
They fenced the area these people were camping in and said we need to plant grass in February, okay? Meanwhile, the city, in doing that, has a $6 million environment hazard contract with a commercial company to do these sweeps, as we call them. A budget that District 9 Councilwoman Candy C. DeBaca says would pay for 200 tiny homes and supportive services for them for a year. This war on the poor has to stop. Like Councilwoman C. DeBaca, Bernie Sanders understands that criminalizing homelessness throws good money after bad, that our unhoused neighbors, a majority who work but cannot afford rent in the mile-high income city of Denver, need help, not harassment. Instead of taking their protection from the cold and subjecting them to a great increase in the likelihood of frostbite or even death, they need housing, they need help. As president, Sanders promises to invest $1.5 trillion over 10 years in the National Affordable Housing Trust Fund to build, rehabilitate, and preserve the 7.4 million quality, affordable, and accessible housing units necessary to eliminate the affordable housing gap. Additionally, he'll invest an additional $400 billion to build 2 million mixed-income housing units, which will help desegregate and integrate communities. This war on the poor has to stop, and we will join Bernie Sanders to stop it. The time for incremental change is over. Millions of Americans are actually homeless, even if the federal government fails to count them. With our help, President Sanders will ensure our nation's wealth serves all of us, and not just the 1%. I'm so grateful he's running, I'm grateful he cares, and I'm grateful I can support him here today. Thank you.
Darren O'Connor, everybody. Are you all still hyped up? Come on, everybody. What's the solution? What's the solution? Beautiful, perfect. Like an 8 out of 10, we'll get that up by the end of the night. Folks, our next speaker, do we have ICE protest leaders here? We do not? Okay, so our next speaker will be speaking on women's rights and how important Bernie Sanders' agenda is to them. Folks, give it up for Emma Tang, everybody. Emma Tang.
Hold on. Not that short. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Emma Tang, and I am an 18-year-old political youth activist. And I am so honored to be with you all here today. And I inspire all young people, or I hope to inspire all young people, to stand up and to take action. And I'm here today to use my privilege to advocate. Privilege comes in many forms, so I urge you to remember yours. So I just wanted to touch on a couple of points. 2 weeks ago, I testified in front of Colorado State Congress and helped them pass a bill that would mandate period products in schools. As an Asian American, this is a race issue because we're taught to keep quiet and we're seen as delicate and submissive. And this results in too many of us lacking the proper education about our own bodies. And so as a student, as a daughter of immigrants, and as a woman who menstruates, I needed this bill to pass. Because each month, my body punishes me for avoiding pregnancy. And so the state should not punish me more by denying easy access to menstrual products. The bill passed, but until it is implemented, thousands of students like me and menstruators will still be forced to choose between their next meal and a period product. And so for too long, we've lived in a world where Viagra is not taxed, but tampons are. And that makes these products even more inaccessible. And 1 in 10 young women miss school because of their period. And we all know that equal access to education is a key component of success to our students. And the period stigma is one that women know too well. I know that I've personally been embarrassed when I buy tampons and there's a male cashier at a checkout station. I am not comfortable with a male OBGYN talking to a male cop about sexual harassment, and I am definitely not comfortable talking to a male nurse about my female body. And so it is difficult to speak up and ask for help when society has told you that periods are dirty and should be kept hidden. And so from a policy point of view, with 73% of congresspeople being men, they can't even say tampon, and so they end up ignoring the issue and silencing us further. So now I say that it is time to be bold about our blood, bold about our bodies, and bold about ourselves, and we must vote out those who are too embarrassed to even say tampon. And so that I hope that menstrual products will be covered under Medicare for all. And second, it is time that we criminalize catcalls and hold men accountable. And because for too long, women have had to take extra precautions to avoid dark alleys and empty streets. And yes, I know that not all men catcall, not all men rape, and not all men are dangerous. But when 1 in 3 women will be assaulted and 1 in 5 in college, it is enough for us to be careful. And on the subject of not all men, I can bet you that every single man has heard a rape joke and stayed silent. And so like the quote says, it is not enough to not be racist. We must actively fight against racism can be applied to rape and harassment as well.
Yes.
But we cannot implement any of these policies that Bernie advocates for if we do not flip the Senate here in Colorado first. We must elect those who have been doing the work here for years and helped elect the first woman and woman of color to Colorado. There are petitions circulating for Lorena Garcia here today. And we urge you to show up to caucus for Stephanie Rose Spalding on March 7th. And so I stand for the equality of all people because equality is not pie. More rights for us does not mean less rights for anyone else. And I ask you to stand with me today because not just our well-being, but our lives are at stake. Thank you.
Emma Tang, everyone. Everybody.
How you doing? It's a powerful day today, folks. Our gathering here in the Bernie Sanders this evening, could life be any better for us? I'm here to talk about endless wars. A little bit about myself. I'm a veteran, served in combat in the Gulf War, retired 2007 in the middle of all the wars that started on the heels of Afghanistan and 9/11. Today's an interesting day for me. I'm here, and my daughter's 17th birthday is today as well. She was born on the heels of 9/11, and her, like many others, have experienced nothing but a lifetime of war. That's never before happened in the history of the United States. And it's unacceptable that it's happening now. There's people that are enlisting in the armed forces today that weren't alive even when 9/11 happened. That's unconscionable. Let's think about what's happened here. $3 trillion. Money's one thing, but let's talk about something else. 250,000 civilian lives. 7,000 Americans killed, tens of thousands wounded, and the carnage continues. There are people from here in Colorado and Fort Carson that gave their lives in service to our country as recently as just last year. So I'd like to take just a moment in remembrance of those folks. That war is not just affecting families here in Colorado, it's affecting families all over the United States and all over the world. It's important to know that. As we look and we think it's time to get out of these endless wars, we think, what's the cost been? Trillions of dollars taken away from our country that have been spent needlessly in parts of the world that do us no service. And this has been the responsibility of every administration at a minimum for the last 20 years. Republican, Democrat. And so what I would say is, this is not about Republicans or Democrats. This is about a corrupt political establishment that is fighting for neoliberal capitalism and markets that they're protecting so that multinational corporations in the military-industrial complex can profit, and Bernie Sanders will change that. It's not enough to say that we want to pull out of the Middle East like President Obama did. It's not enough to say we're going to bring peace to Afghanistan like President Trump is trying to do. It's time to have a different mentality, and that's a mentality where the people are put first, not the multinational corporations and the profits. Let's put this in perspective. Over 50% of our budget, discretionary budget, is spent on defense. We spend more on our defense than the 10 next nations who spend on defense. $750 billion plus is what's been suggested. The numbers go on and on. We could take 10% of that budget, public college education for everybody. We could take 20% of that budget and probably solve the poor children problem that we have in America. We could take 30% of that budget and create a system of renewable energy throughout the country. That's what we could do with that money. But let me bring it home even more. One single F-35, and I was a fighter pilot, and I can actually appreciate the engineering that's gone into that thing. One single F-35 can fund a school district in Weld County. $100 million. That just ain't right, and it's time to stop. So, we need to get behind a president that will put the people first. We need to get behind a president who will bring that money home, and instead of thinking about the security of multinational corporations, think about the security of our parents, our loved ones, our children, and especially those who are at risk here in this country for all the damage that has been done. President Sanders, let's go!
We are out here trying to change things. So in 2016, like a lot of you guys, I felt powerless. Powerless to stop Trump, powerless to change our broken and corrupt political system, powerless to see all these issues that we're fighting for sidelined, to not see them come true. But then, today the theme tonight is when we organize, we win. And that's what I did. 3 years ago, a senator from Vermont wrote a book called Our Revolution, and I read it. Bernie Sanders said that we need to fundamentally transform the Democratic Party. So I read his book, and I went to work. So I walked down to my local Democratic Party and tried to sign up. So really what I want to talk about is personal empowerment. And that's what it's all about. It's about how you can take your power back, how you can go out and do what we did. So right now we need to fundamentally transform the Democratic Party. This used to be the party of FDR, the party of JFK, the party of RFK. It's the party of the New Deal, the party of the Great Society, the party of the Civil Rights Movement, the party that took us to the moon. That was the Democratic Party, that was us. It was the party of we the people. And the secret sauce of that Democratic Party was we would bring in the people and we would pick community leaders. We would pick people who were already out there fighting the fight. And we would pre-select the most popular person, the person with the ideas, the people who could transform this country, and we put them up against a corporate sellout Republican.
And we ran this country for decades under that method. And then in the 90s, the Clintons, the Gores, the Democratic Leadership Committee, a Koch brothers funded organization, put money into this party. And people started taking that money and started selling you out, selling us out, selling these ideas out. So, Bernie Sanders came along and said no more of that. Said get involved, go down to your Democratic Party, become a member, get involved. So I did. Enough is enough. And right now, we're sitting here 2 years after we founded Our Revolution in Weld County. And I'm not just the chair of that organization, I'm also a member of the Weld County Democratic Party Executive Committee. I'm also a member of the Colorado Democratic Party's Congressional District 4 Committee. I'm also part of the Colorado Democratic Party Executive Committee, Central Committee. I'm part of dozens and dozens of other committees, and I'm not just talking about me because this isn't about me. This is about us. And I got dozens of my friends that went along with me. We now have a comfortable majority on the Weld County Democratic Party. 12 of our 14 members that go to state Democratic Party for Colorado are Our Revolution members. Almost our entire delegation to the CD4 committee is Our Revolution members. We now have a second vice chair, our first member of leadership through a vacancy committee. We have an Our Revolution member in leadership on the Weld County Democratic Party. That's 2 years of transformation. Empowering people, putting people together, giving them the ability to have their voice heard. And if you can hear my voice today, if you're out there at home, if you're in this room, you can transform this party, and this is how you do it. You show up to caucus, you show up to your party, and you say, I want to be a precinct committee person. PCP, that is the lowest rank in the Democratic Party, but it is the most powerful rank in the Democratic Party because they elect everybody every step above them. Your PCPs elect your leadership. They elect people to be on these committees. They elect people at the state level, at the DNC, and all throughout this process. You can do that. All you have to do is show up. I know in Weld County we have 100 of the 300 that we're supposed to have. 200 revolutionaries in Weld County transforms that party. You do the same thing in Denver, in Boulder, anywhere you go, we can transform the party. So we need people willing to step up, willing to step in, take the reins. All of you are activists. They're going to make it sound like it's a lot of work. It is not. You're already doing a lot of work. Realistically, if you're as involved as I am, and I am deeply entrenched in this, I spend realistically a couple of hours a month and a couple of full days out of the year. That's a small price to pay for your civic duty. That's a small price to pay to have your voice heard. And when I say have your voice heard, I mean it. I have heard my vice chair's words come out of a federal candidate's mouth, stand on stage just like this, because she talked to him and she convinced him that her way was better. I've dealt with 13 different campaigns now in the last 3 years, and I have changed policies on every one of those campaigns because I was in the position to do so. So, on March 7th, we're going to have a caucus here in Colorado. All across the country, you're going to have this. And at those caucuses, all you have to do is stand up and say, I want to be precinct committee person. I want to be precinct chair. I want to be the delegate. I want to be the person to represent my people and my community. And I'm not just talking to Our Revolution because this didn't start as an Our Revolution group. This started as me and my friends bitching about politics in this garage on Friday nights. It really did. So, if you got a D&D group, start it. You got a sewing circle, start it. Fight for 15. I see DSA back there. DSA, you can do this too. I don't care who you are. I don't care how big your group is. When we organize, we win. And that's all it is. You organize your group can be as big and as powerful as my group.
your group can transform this party. Your group can transform this country, because that's what it's all about. What's the solution? Our revolution! Thank you guys. Were we organized? Were we organized? Were we organized? All right, revolutionary. Thank you.
What's the solution?